This is Greg Canty here, and welcome to the Win Happy podcast. Stay tuned for interesting chats with interesting people about winning their lives and being happy at the same time. This show has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. Thanks for listening. At the end of November, as all of the talk about Christmas was in full swing, I asked two of my special friends to come on the podcast to talk about this Christmas, but in their case, a wartime Christmas. Paul Nyland, an Irishman, has been living in Kyiv for over 20 years. He is the founder and the CEO of Lifeline Ukraine. Darina Grujdeva was forced to leave Kyiv with her family because of the war and has been living and working in Ireland since March 2022. I asked both of them about the challenges of Putin's pointless war, and in particular, how they are feeling about another wartime Christmas. Putin must be stopped, and the free world must provide Ukraine with all the help that it needs to make this happen and make the world a safer place for all of us. To my listeners, thank you sincerely for tuning in during 2023. I wish you and yours a very peaceful Christmas and hopefully a great new year. See you in 2024. A huge welcome back to the Win Happy podcast to Paul Nyland and Darina Grujdeva. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Kind of. I struggle with these things, Paul. You know, these Irishmen and these strange surnames and how to pronounce them and everything. For my listeners, Paul is, can I call you a journalist, Paul? A political commentator and the CEO of Lifeline Ukraine?
I'm founder and director of Lifeline Ukraine, but you can call me a journalist, and I do comment on various things.
Yeah, once or twice.
Every now and then.
Yeah, and an Irishman who's been living in Ukraine for over 20 years.
Correct.
And Darina, you're a neighbour of Paul, well, a recent neighbour of Paul, but not at the moment. You left Ukraine in February of last year for obvious reasons, and you've been in Ireland since March 2022.
Yeah.
And before we hit record, I was just discussing with the two guys how myself and Dasha, we marched together in Cork City last February on the 24th. I don't know, just to mark the anniversary of a year of stupidity and murder and destruction. But now you're getting on with life in Cork and you have a job and everything else. And I guess in a way, the backdrop to all of this, from an Irish context, it feels to me that Ukraine has slipped into a wallpaper of news a little bit. I would absolutely say there's a bit of an anti-immigration thing that's getting louder and louder. I'm sure, Paul, you would have seen all that rubbish in Dublin. You would have thought the war was in Dublin last week and not in Ukraine. And, of course, all driven by these far-right nutjobs and everything else. The Israel-Hamas war is after entering the agenda, and that's occupying a lot of people's space. The headlines today in the newspaper was that Emily Hand, a 9-year-old Irish kid, was just one of the hostages rescued from Hamas. And we also saw a headline that Ukraine had a lot of drones that hit Russia yesterday in 4 different regions. And I think that was in response to the heaviest drone attack since the war began by the Russians the previous day. So with all of that taken into account, I'd like to ask both of you a question. And then feel free to just take over the conversation if you would. And I'll start with you, Paul. This time 2 years ago, in the run-up to Christmas, what were you doing?
Let me just add some context onto the note that you just made there about the huge drone attack that we suffered on Kiev yesterday. I think there were 60 drones directed at Kiev, 75 in total, and I think 74 of them were shot down. But the air defenses make a lot of noise. But the context for that is that yesterday was actually the memorial day for the Holodomor genocide that occurred 90 years ago. It was 1932 and 1933. And so, yes, it's absolutely in the nature, the spiteful nature of those in Moscow who are directing all of this, that they would deliberately target the capital city on Holodomor Memorial Day. What was I doing 2 years ago? Sorry, to go back to your question. I honestly don't really remember, Greg, and there is kind of before the full scale invasion, after the full scale invasion, lives changed. I mean, especially for Daria having to pick up with, I don't know who you left with, what kind of family you moved to Ireland with, people having to pick up and start brand new lives. And what was before the full scale invasion, it's a distant memory. Our thoughts and focus are necessarily on what we have experienced and what we've lived through in these 21 months. But our thoughts and focus is very much on the future. Now, this is what we have to be looking towards. This is what we have to be talking about and focusing on, because this war has to end, and it has to end as swiftly as possible. And there are the capabilities in the West to provide Ukraine with what it needs to win. If you take, for example, and I know I'm going on a little bit in my first answer here, but if you take, for example, the amount of the US defense budget that has been sent to Ukraine, it's the equivalent of 5%. 5% of their defense budget. So there's still 95% left over. Or in other words, they could quadruple the aid that they're delivering, which is already very significant. And we're extremely grateful to everybody who has provided military assistance to Ukraine. But if the US quadrupled that, they'd still have 80% of their defense budget that is for that very purpose, the defense of the United States of America. And, sure you have a question lined up for Daria. I will not hog this podcast, I promise.
No, I'm totally agree with all your words, what you told as a beginner, like Christmas before war and Christmas, like even last year, I didn't feel this Christmas, to be honest. Yeah, like everyone have yellow tree, start to buying all of these gifts and etc., but you don't feel a real Christmas inside. And also, I just want to say we're really thankful for every helping what giving West Europe, America, but it's still not enough. Not enough to win. And it's like since last our podcast almost gone 1 year, and more people have in their mind question why we don't have enough. It looks like that someone would like that we had with Russia long-term war, but not like active, like passive war. But why nobody give to us like enough to stop it? Yeah, this is main question. It's a main question in every Ukrainian head. Like, why it's like that? Is it because our corruption in the country, or it's because some another political reason? Like, what's the answer?
So I want to just come back on one thing that you said. You said that there's a feeling, and I hear many people saying this, that there's a feeling that the West wants this to be a protracted war, or they want it to be a frozen, more or less.
I didn't say West, like, but some political interest from someone,
What I believe, and these two things can both be true at the same time. Nobody wants this to be a long war. And people need to realize that it is within the capacities of our combined allies to actually enable us to win this war as fast as possible. Like the kind of missiles, the ATACMS missiles that were sent by the United States that were a red line for Russia, and then they were sent and they were used, and we destroyed some helicopter bases, which makes a big difference on the front line, right? Those initial ATACMS missiles were limited in number. And we've used them, and we've proved that we can use them effectively. The United States could ship 300 of them tomorrow when we got 20 previously. They could ship 300 without affecting their strategic readiness to do what the United States military might have to do in circumstances. So, no, I don't think that people want a war, and I don't think that people realize that the war is winnable, and it's winnable now. And throughout this winter, we should be utilizing not just American ATACMS in large numbers, but German Taurus missiles as well that are fired from the air. They're similar to the Scalps that the French provided, the Storm Shadows that the British have provided, and we can use them, and we use them to very, very good effect. Send them. What's the debate? Send them. Because the more weapons we get, the more damage we can do to the Russian infrastructure and ability to continue to wage this war. And then the faster the war comes to an end with Ukraine's victory and Russia's defeat and ejection from all of Ukraine. That is doable. The F-16's coming in the spring to be, used on the battlefield. Great. But why such a low number? Why are we talking about a couple of dozen of them? That's the frustration. But as Daria rightly said as well, Greg, is that we are, and I think I said the same thing, we're extremely grateful for everything that gets sent, but frustrated at the same time that it's not enough.
Yeah, exactly.
I think with both of you, the simple question about what you were doing this time 2 years ago, you can't even think back to it. It's future forward, it's getting all of this sorted. So, Darina, for Paul, can you explain to him how you have rebuilt your life here and what it's like now with you and your family in Ireland?
I really want to hear that, but I want to just agree with you on one more thing as well that you said, first of all, Darina, and it's something that Greg and I actually joked about last year, whether we felt Christmassy and whether I should put up a Christmas tree. And I said that I wasn't going to, and he actually ran a Twitter poll. Should Paul put up a Christmas tree, yes or no, right? But you were exactly right. We didn't feel Christmassy. Daria, please, as Greg just asked, tell us about your move and how you've settled in and everything. I want to know your experience.
I would like to tell that compared with previous year, I feel so much better mentality, like previous year was very tough for me and I have to start life from like beginner to find a job, find a place where to live, to make decision, are we staying in Ireland or what we do, what wasn't easier, yeah? So like after 1 year and a half here in Ireland, I feel so much better. I have a permanent job. I have permanent place to live. Like, it looks like your life alive again. But in the same time, you have like roller coaster. Like you look like your life okay now, but inside you sometimes feel like you are sometimes don't feel that it's your reality. You are still in Ukraine. I don't know, like is this phenomenon. Like I can't complain, like I have a typical normal life, but I don't know, sometimes you feel really sad inside, especially if something happened. I remember in June it was, if you remember, Russia bombed a bridge and Kakhovska gas, this water floating. To be honest, I wanted to be in a bed. I didn't want to go to work, to out. I just wanted to stay in a bed. It felt like in like 24 February. It felt the same. So, like to say, I have everything what human need for life, but I still can say that I feel 100% mentally okay, because in my country it's still war. People struggling, and I'm frustrating about a lot of things what we talked previously, and other things what we have in our country. It's also corruption. So yeah, it's like that.
Can I ask how close were both of you in terms of neighbours, because you were both living in Kyiv? Does Paul know where you were living?
No, Paul, where are you living in Kyiv?
I'm on Podil.
Where?
Podil.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. The best place. So Paul living in the city center. I'm living a little bit farther. I lived in Nivki.
Oh, okay. I know Nivki well.
And Dasha, the community of Ukrainians living in Ireland, could you explain to Paul, what it's like here and whether you get together, you don't, and what that community is saying and what they're feeling about how things are?
I think everyone feel here differently. It depends, are they with a family or not here. For example, some women with child and without husband here, so they're struggling. And I know a lot of women who came back to Ukraine because their husband there, and they don't want to living for a long time without each other. Two my friends, women friends, they went to Ukraine just because husband, and they have children or child, and they wanted to be together. Some people found like okay, like I wanted to move abroad. Now it's like my chance. I have a good job here. I can settle and start a new life in Ireland. It's very, very different, but everyone feels sadness about what going on in their country, and everyone would like to take a flight to Kyiv and visit their relatives and have a good time. And also in Ireland, a lot of people struggling, even if they have a job, both and child, they can't find accommodation, like proper house or apartment. I think it's a huge problem, number one, for everyone who living in Ireland. And I'm not talking about free accommodation. I'm talking about they're ready to pay rent because both found a job but can't find anything for them.
Yeah, and that's one of the big problems that's fueling a lot of this anti-immigration stuff. I think after, what was it, Electric Picnic, there was a big tented village after the gig. And I think the tented village became like a proper camp for refugees for like 3 months, wasn't it?
They thought it's like a temporary for 8 weeks, something like that. And after they will move you somewhere, but next place could be even worse than that camp.
And Dasha, with you and your community and your family and everything else, I get a feeling when I'm talking to you that as time goes on, you're getting further and further away from Ukraine. Is there a chance that some people will never go back?
Yes.
Okay.
Unfortunately, yes. Unfortunately, it will be after work a second big problem that plenty families will not come back home, unfortunately.
What's happened to your apartment, Dasha? Is there someone living there now?
My mom gave her apartment for people who are living something like from Bakhmut, near Bakhmut, because Bakhmut, like no city anymore, destroyed totally.
So Paul, how's life for you at the moment? There's a whole bunch of things that I want to reply to in what Darina's just said, actually, and you know, this gives me an opportunity to talk about the work that my organization does, Lifeline Ukraine. And you know, we knew that the people who were displaced, whether they're internally displaced, the residents of your flat now from Bakhmut have stayed within the country, but you know, there are something like 6 million internally displaced people in Ukraine. And then the number of refugees that fled overseas, there's another 4 million Ukrainians who are in third countries now. So we knew that this was going to be something that presents, exactly as Daria's described, a particular set of psychological challenges. And so therefore we knew that this was going to be something that Lifeline Ukraine was going to be involved in providing a response to people who are struggling with the kind of emotions that Daria describes. But yeah, I mean, like the decision, first of all, to leave comes with that. What do you take? Like only as much as you can carry, you know, and that's per each person, and many people traveling with children. And then exactly as Daria described, you arrive in a completely new place and you have to start again from scratch. Daria, I'm so pleased that you've found those new comforts and that you've rebuilt your life. But what you've experienced alongside all of the other Ukrainians who are affected by this war, it's perfectly normal. It's absolutely perfectly normal that somebody who has been uprooted from the life that they knew and, you know, does not have. I'm sitting here at home, Greg. On my left is one of my guitars, my guitar chair that I play in, and my music stand. You know, I have my art on my walls. I have my family photographs. You know, and the people who upped and left, all of that is just. Again, it's like it's before the full-scale war. It's after the full-scale war. This has brought very different realities for us all. But you asked how things are with me. I'm exceptionally busy raising money for Lifeline Ukraine. That's one of the things that I'm always busy with. I continue my work as a journalist. I just had a piece published yesterday in the Byline supplement, actually, which is for their longer reads, because it was an analysis not of news necessarily, but something contemporary and historical. So I wrote an article about the most recent attempt in the lead up to the full-scale invasion to starve the people of Ukraine. There was a recent investigation that has exposed what the Russians were doing, buying grain ships, 170-meter-long mass cargo ships, with the full intention of taking as much of Ukrainian agricultural produce as they possibly could and starving us again. And it was published yesterday, which, as I mentioned earlier, is the 90th anniversary this year of the Holodomor. And so I compared it back to, the previous attempt to create a genocide of the Ukrainian people. But, I can describe the situation in Kiev as feeling almost normal. We did have that massive barrage of drone attacks. I slept through it. I don't wake up to the sound of air defenses anymore unless it's a hypersonic missile that's getting intercepted, because they're big, loud bangs. But the Gepard guns shooting down the drones, that doesn't wake me up. But outside of that, there's a feeling of normalcy. We know that the city is well protected. Many people, as I said earlier on, with families have returned because they feel that the city is safe enough. There was a kindergarten that was destroyed yesterday. The falling debris from one of these drones hit and destroyed this building here in Kiev, where people send their children to go and play and have fun and make friends and begin to experience that socialization. And the building is just destroyed. There was footage of the school teacher walking through what was her classroom, just in tears, because, this haven that she created for these young children has just been destroyed by Russian terrorism, So, yeah, there are risks. And on the face of things, it looks like things are more or less normal. The restaurants work, the bars work. And, I met two of my friends last night, in actual fact. But underneath, everybody is talking about the war. Everybody's concerned about the war. There was one other thing that you mentioned as well, Daria, when you talked about the blowing up of the dam at Novakhovka. You said it was a bridge, but it was a dam that held back a large body of water. And the reason why that was such a devastating attack for so many of us, I count myself to be Ukrainian, Daria. I've been here for 20 years. I'm Ukrainian, right? And for those of us who are Ukrainian, we knew what was downstream from there. We knew the beautiful wetlands and marshlands that were home to so many unique species or migratory species. And by destroying the dam and allowing the flooding of everything that came downstream, much of that was wiped out. We knew it. It was ecocide at the time that it was done. And the international reaction to our feelings were terrible, but the international reaction was completely insufficient. It was a massive, deliberate terrorist act of ecocide on some of the finest parts of this amazing country of diversity and beauty.
And also, I was surprised that, like in a West news or somewhere, it wasn't not too much news about it. They just a little bit said that what happened, and that's all. I mean, not in Ukrainian news, in foreign news. And it was, I don't know, it was like everyone started to forgotten about our country. And it feels like a bit, I don't know how it will be disappointing. I don't know, something like that.
And I remember the day after the dam blew up, I'd arranged to meet a friend at a certain place here in Kiev. And walking in through the front door, it was clear that they became a reception point for goods that were being donated to be sent down to Kherson. And it was absolutely full of food, of bottled water, of pet food, of all of those kind of immediate and basic necessities that had to get sent down there. And that's the other side to living in Kiev as well at the moment. As I said, the war is never far away from any of us. But when awful tragedies like that happen, and you see how these people muster together and rally around and respond immediately and in volume to go and help and support the people who are the victims of these awful acts that are being perpetrated against us, it's inspiring to see that kind of thing from these people, just going through the worst adversities and becoming a better society as a result of it.
Dasha, I have a few little questions for you. One, I just wonder, are you in contact with a lot of friends and family who might still be living in Kiev? And two, I know you've got Russian relatives, and the last time we spoke on the podcast, you were speaking about how they just didn't believe anything that was happening. I think at the time there were photographs of an apartment building, was it one of your relatives' homes that was bombed? And they were even questioning you as to whether the photographs were real. And the third thing, I just wonder, do you have any questions for Paul about your city and what it's like now?
I just wanted to say, first of all, Paul, I'm so jealous that you're sitting now in Kiev and I'm in Cork. Really, I'm plenty time jealous when I hear that somebody going to Kiev or stuff like that. I'm really, really miss so much. It's my favorite city, and to be honest, I still have fear to go to Kiev. Maybe I'm too sensitive after what happened with me. Some people more brave, some people less. I still have a lot of friends from Ukraine, from Kiev, like mostly my friends from Kiev. I'm still talking with them. They thought, yeah, we try to live a normal life, but sometimes we don't have a dream. Yeah, we need to wake up because drones or stuff like that, but pretend to have a normal life. And I sometimes listening hear some blaming why Ukrainians have a normal life. It's not a real war. But I would like to say, nobody can live in condition 24 hours, 335 days per year just in a war conditions. You will get crazy. So everyone try to have their life. And I have relatives in Russia. And I think I just only talking with my grandmother and grandfather, not more with anyone after all what happened. And I even stop talking about politicals with my grandmother and grandfather because I'm just worried about them, that they're very old. They don't have anyone in Russia. And even due to what everything happened, I'm still miss for them, and I wanted to visit them. And I even don't know when it's happened because two things why I don't want to go Russia. I feel very aggression, and it's normal. And secondly, even if I needed to visit them, I don't know what to expect from Russian border. So yeah, but it's my family, and it's very hard me that I don't see them or have this conversation. It's still a family. I don't know how to be in this situation, to be honest. Even now, if you would like to see your family in Russia, they just told you can come only Sheremetyevo airport, and any others airport with Ukrainian passport you can't visit. And even if I can, I told you, it's very afraid. You don't know what to, and also how to don't say anything what you wanted to say to them. I feel that I don't want to go inside, and in my head I understand that they are so old and I have to visit them. So this is my inside conflict.
Paul, the status of the war right now, as you understand it and witness it?
I want to go back actually to the question that you put to Daria about her relatives in Russia not believing the photographs, not believing the things that she was saying about what's happening here. It's a misnomer. It's a blatant lie. It's a cover up. They know.
They know. They just don't want to pretend that it's our army or it's we. Because if they will accept the truth, it means they are responsible for it. Nobody wants to be responsible and feel guilty. This is psychology things.
Perfectly stated. Yes, completely right. Their televisions pump out the most vile, hatred inciting lies to the Russian population. And they know what is going on. They know what is being encouraged. They know the war crimes that are underway. They know that civilians are being attacked. And when they pretend otherwise, it's just a lie. To answer your question about the state of the war as I see it right now, here's the thing. This war has unfolded in several phases, right? And I mean, the first phase of the war was the invasion in 2014. That was the beginning of Vladimir Putin deciding to move borders by force with the theft of Crimea, and then with the creation in the Kremlin of the war in the Donbass, right? That was when he first decided that he was using military force against this country, and it was only going to continue. So then the second phase of the war, the first phase never ended. It was never a frozen conflict, and it was certainly never an internal conflict. It was external aggression, and it was externally directed. The second phase of the war from the 24th of February was Russia's attempt to swiftly grab hold of not only massive swathes of land in the south and in the northeast, in Kharkiv and in Zaporizhia and Kherson oblasts, but they really came for the capital as well. And so that blitzkrieg that took so much land in the early stages, the first turning point of this war was when that was stopped, when their advances could go no further. And I wrote an article about Bakhmut, which Daria mentioned earlier on, people who fled from Bakhmut as the Russians destroyed it and now living in her apartment in Kiev. But I wrote an article saying that Bakhmut was the culmination point of Russia's attack capabilities. And the Russian army themselves couldn't do that. Famously, they had to use Wagner to do it. And then famously, days after it was decided, okay, there's no more point in defending this pile of rubble that the Russians have destroyed, right? Just let them have it. A few days later, Wagner, leader at the time, now dead, Yevgeny Prigozhin, said that they were leaving the city because they could see that it was a Pyrrhic victory. It cost them so much, and Ukraine has continued to counterattack around Bakhmut now to continue wiping out Russian forces where they are in an area, because it was only recently taken. And this is a key point about how the war is going. The Russians around Bakhmut have not had time to build these big defenses that they have in the south, what's called the Surovikin line, where there's these lines of dragon's teeth and trenches and minefields and all the rest of it. And they never should have been given time to have built up those defenses, which is what is making the counteroffensive there so very slow. Ukraine cares about the lives of troops and about the equipment that we have in limited numbers, be they armored personnel vehicles, infantry fighting vehicles, or tanks, or whatever. And plus, we don't yet have the air cover to keep those assets safe as they're going on the move. That only comes with the F-16s. So the war has not gone as fast during this summer as many people hoped that it would. And those are the reasons why. That is what has happened. But what is going to happen going forward from here, and this is why we discussed at the top of the show the need for more support, more military equipment to be sent to Ukraine. Ukraine will continue to attack Russian military assets, logistics posts, command centers. They're trying to build a railway across the south of Ukraine, across the land that they took for the land bridge to Crimea. They want to build a railway there. That requires, I'm no expert on building railways, but that requires some very heavy equipment. And Ukraine should be given the capability to strike that stuff and end that project now, and to keep on attacking Russian military assets in Crimea, because that is of importance for multiple reasons. One is the security of cargo vessels going through the Black Sea. And with Ukraine having targeted Sevastopol, having targeted the Kerch port as well over on the eastern side of Crimea, the Russian Black Sea Fleet has essentially been pushed back. And obviously the Sevastopol headquarters strike as well, which was a very ballsy thing to do in broad daylight. And thank you once again, whether it was the Storm Shadow or the Scalp, that was a precise and deliberate operation with the right tools for the job. And Ukraine can continue to do more and more of this. But as the Russian capabilities on Crimea have continued to be degraded, most of the Russian Black Sea Fleet is now in Novorossiysk, on the other side of the Black Sea, which gives it less capacity to fire missiles, cruise missiles, from those ships at Ukrainian civilian targets. And It's changing the balance of power in the Black Sea. That is the massive success that Ukraine has had through this phase of the counteroffensive. And the counteroffensive continues in many different vectors. It continues on land, it continues at sea, and it's also continuing through attacking Russian targets within Russia itself, as we've seen over the last day, the drone strikes that are going on there. And that obviously needs to continue. There's an embargo on using Western supplied weapons on Russian territory, whatever. I can argue that it's wrong, and any military strategist will tell you that it's wrong. Anybody who understands morality tells you that such an embargo is morally wrong. We should be able to hit any target that is capable of launching attacks at us. That is the rule of war. That is the line. That's permissible. But okay, we have our own domestic production. But to continue to use Western supplied long-range precision artillery throughout this winter period now, to continue to degrade Russia's fighting capacity as we then move into the spring with the F-16s in the air. That's where this war has been, a brief history of this war. That's where it has been fought over this summer. And this is what the winter and then the next campaign has in store for the occupiers. It will only get worse for them. And when I say only get worse, over the last couple of weeks, the Russians are taking an average of 1,000 casualties every single day. That is unsustainable.
Yeah, and Putin doesn't seem to care fiddlers how many of his own people die every day. That's what it feels like. So, Paul, the collective in Ukraine is the feeling that we're winning this. You're absolutely convinced, but that we're winning this. And
absolutely, it's not only a feeling that we are winning this. It is an absolute conviction that we are going to win this.
Yeah.
And the definition of victory is every single Russian occupier out of Ukrainian territory. That's it.
And that feeling in Ireland from you and your community, is that the same?
Here it's two opinions. One is that people truly believe that they will take land until 1991, so before first invasion of Russia in 2014. And second opinion that we need to forget, for example, about Crimea, because if we decided to take back Crimea, a lot of people will die. So what is not good to what's the price to take back Crimea for us, for Ukraine? I mean, it's very nice to have to be a winner in all TV and newspapers and etc. But it's someone's son, husband, and dad. How many? How many will be cost for us? I'm just not in a political. I'm just from a human perspective.
And Darina, as you know full well, the awful human cost of this war is something that is ever present on the minds of everybody in Ukraine. And again, that's why it needs to be finished sooner, right? Not, this notion that we often hear of people saying they'll stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes. Not as long as it takes. Give Ukraine what is needed to win faster is where the message should be. But the kind of warfare that you're talking about with infantry going into Crimea and retaking the peninsula that way, that's not the way. I listen to a lot of military strategists and planners. I don't have a military background myself. What I know about what's happening here is sort of self-taught by listening to some real experts. And the strategy is to make Crimea untenable for Russia, to leave them with no military bases there, no air bases, no naval bases, no barracks, no military assets at all. And that's it. That is the liberation of Crimea. And that is what is going to take Ukraine getting certain kinds of weapons to within a closer range of Crimea, which is why what's happening on the left bank of the Kherson River over the last actually it's been going on for almost 2 months now, but certainly the Ukrainian position on the left bank is no longer just a bridgehead. It's no longer just holding it temporarily. There's large numbers of troops that are now there present, and the Russians are thin on the ground in that area and restocking them with men or ammunition or necessary food and water is increasingly difficult for the Russians. So we'll continue to see a lot going on the left bank. But the strategy for Crimea is long range strikes. And just again, the goal is to make the occupation of Crimea untenable for the Russian forces. And that is where we will get to. And that is the ending point of the war, with obviously then justice and reparations being the next necessary thing. And you know, for people, Greg, who talk about negotiations, the only negotiations to be had with whatever follows the Putin regime when it collapses in defeat, the only negotiations are the amount and the schedule and the guarantees of reparations from Russia for what they've done, for the hundreds of billions of dollars of damage and the psychological and emotional damage that they've done to this country and the people of this country. That's the only thing to be discussed.
And when it comes to that psychological damage, Paul, how is Lifeline Ukraine going?
We, as I mentioned earlier on, I'm constantly in fundraising mode. I'm always looking for further support to continue funding our work. We're developing very much as an organization, and one of the things that we've got coming up is my specialists are going to be going into the regions. This is in partnership with an organization called the International Medical Corps, and they're in the regions and they're working on the ground with specialists, with psychologists and with social workers and various other people. And more frequently, they're encountering people struggling with emotions or with suicidal ideation or suicidal thoughts. And so we're going to do a series of training sessions. My specialists are going out to do these training sessions in person with groups of 30 people. And that's an exciting development that will take place over the next few months. The hotline itself, we went from, prior to the full-scale invasion, providing an average of 1,000 instances of support every month. And now we provide around 4,000 instances of support per month. So there's been a surge in demand for help from Lifeline Ukraine. And we've done, as the leader of the organization with my management team, we've done everything that we can. As I mentioned earlier on, like we did a training session so that we know better how to support people who are displaced by the conflict, because we learned about the specific kind of questions that they're dealing with. And so that's why I understand Daria so well. And yeah, I mean, it's awful to talk about this, but talk about it we must. Another training session that we did was how to provide comfort and support to victims of the sexual violence that the Russians have been responsible for everywhere they have occupied. That is one of the kinds of scenarios that my colleagues encounter nowadays when they answer the phone. They never know what that call is going to be about, obviously, at the beginning, and it could be any one of a number of things. It could be loneliness, Greg, And so my colleagues have I've tried to equip them with as many tools as they would need to be able to respond in different situations, and whatever they come up against, they're prepared and they're ready, and they provide really, really essential care and help, and to that level now of 4,000 instances of support per month, as opposed to the 1,000 before the 24th of February last year.
And the increase in support for all of those people who need it, Paul, are you always looking out for good, talented, passionate people to join your team and help deliver those services?
Yeah, that's very much something that my project manager and I have been actively discussing already for several months. That as the demand continues to grow, we need to broaden the bench. We need to have a larger team of experts and specialists so that we're kind of sharing the burden between a larger number of people. My team that I have now, the original team as it first came together over 4 years ago, they're still very much intact, and they've taken this increase in demand in their stride heroically, like throughout their own. Everybody here is experiencing their own personal difficulties, but because they're dedicated to our mission, because they know the essential nature of the work that they're doing. Like, they've taken this within everything else that's going on, taken this increase in workload, and now we are preparing, to expand the team and to add more professionals to those who are doing the work that my colleagues do.
Yeah, and to my little warrior in Ireland and your experience with your community, Dasha, and as a general thing, from that first moment you came to Ireland and what you're experiencing now, do you think Ireland is as helpful and the Ukrainian community have been supported? Have you seen a change in that since you've got there? And when you hear Paul talking about the support services that the Lifeline Ukraine are supporting in Ukraine, do you see the same being needed in an Irish context?
I think here we have a few services when you can call if you need it. I mean, psychologist services. Even once was created like Ukrainian Polish Association. They have in Cork, you can attend at them. It's like a group, and if you would like to talk, but like from my perspective, I prefer like face-to-face, one-to-one. Yeah, have a call if you feel something, anxiety, some like depression. Also, we have a few another line if you can call. I don't know how people use it or not, because unfortunately, mostly people, when they have anxiety and all of these symptoms, they go and drink alcohol or eating a lot of food. I remember what happened with me. I get, I think, plus 5 kg. I just eat it Haribo every day for a few packages just because this worries, So, but anyway, I know how it's useful because I had psychologist for 6 months here. Had psychologists just to help me rebuild my mentality. And I think what Paul doing it's very well because, of course, when like people in Ukraine, like we're talking, for example, Kyiv, they pretend that they're living a normal life, that they're smiling, go out, something like that. But inside, they have this anxiety. They don't know what happened next minute, next hour, next day. They just try to hide deeply their anxiety, their worries. Somebody have some members of family to take a part of war, and they also thinking, will he call me today or not? So I think it's very, very important now to have a very good mentality support for Ukrainians. Plus, also, we need to have some program rehabilitation for people who took a part of the war, soldiers, and come back after different disability, after different things. Their mentality changed so much, and I'm worried that we don't have enough Ukraine training centers like specialized who will provide and help them. It's not even easy for psychologists to work with the soldiers. Not everyone prepared to hear what he will tell to you. It's another life, what we never see. And when you come back from that side to normal life, you can't understand how people live here normally. So like we have two problems. It's civilians who living their typical life but still have a lot of anxiety, some like higher raising level of depression. Plus we need another part of people who will help soldiers who came back from the front, from the war. So we need two separate lines, one helping civilians because it's another instrument, and second line who will help soldiers to again involve in a normal society. So this is my point. And here in Ireland, it's again another question. It's immigration. It's also another stress. You like escape from the war. You wasn't prepared for immigration. It's not like when you decided, okay, let's go abroad. No, you like just came and like where I am. It's also another problem. So I don't know how everyone deal with it. I just found for me a key that I have to settle here and pretend that I have to have a normal life. I have to settle and just be focused to building my life. It's like my key. Because if I always will be in this news, in all of this, what happened in my country, it wouldn't be healthy for me as well. Even here in Ukraine, I have a friend who is volunteer, very, very good volunteer. and I see that she is burned out. She every day try to help people. She's a hero for me. But the problem is she need to have a rest too, because you couldn't help everyone war every second, and you also need to keep your mental health. It's my view of problems what we have now. I think, Paul, you know what people calling and what kind of support they ask, like even better than me.
Of course, when I established Lifeline Ukraine, first and foremost, we were established to support soldiers who had been fighting in the Donbass since 2014, the veterans, of which there were already hundreds of thousands in 2019 when we started our work. I always designed Lifeline Ukraine in such a way that it would be, through a process of evolution, it would become the suicide prevention hotline for everybody across Ukraine, not just military or veterans or their family members, but for everybody. And that's what we are now. There are other hotlines that have opened up. One of them actually is now run by a former colleague of mine who is a veteran and a psychologist. And so there's a new hotline specifically for veterans. It's run by my colleague Sasha. And I love the fact that I brought him into this sphere, and now he's developing it in his own way and in a way that's really, really great for the country too. So yeah, I completely agree with everything that you said, Daria. You sum it up very, very well. And when you said, you know, we all know people who are fighting, right? All of us, everybody. I have probably 24 friends who are in the military. And, you know, we suffer, as Daria said, you know, the constant worry of, will that person stop calling? Because you know what that means, right? I mean, it's not that I'm called every day by my friends on the front, but you know, if I heard that I lost someone close to me, then, you know, that's an anticipation that we all have. It's there as a grumbling, constant reminder of the bravery of the men and women who are fighting back against this invasion and ejecting the Russian occupation forces.
You're both on the Win Happy podcast, and can I put it to both of you that this war has been won already? Putin will never, ever, ever achieve what he set out to achieve. That idea is long gone. And what's happening now is that slow path to him just stopping his craziness. But what he tried to achieve, what he tried to win at the beginning, is long collapsed. That is never, ever, ever going to happen. And it's just a question of time before the madness finishes. That's the first thing that I wanted to say. And on a positive note, I wanted maybe both of you to give me your perspective on Ukraine when all this is done. Like, I'm looking at Dasha and all of the other fantastic people from Ukraine who've now experienced life in Europe and in other civilizations, and bringing all that intelligence and all of that learning back to a vibrant Ukraine that rebuilds itself. I can see something very, very special. And that resilience, Paul, that you've so eloquently described to me every single time we've spoken to, it's something incredible about the Ukrainian people. And just going forward, that rebuild. Am I being an idiot by having that perspective on things?
I think when it will be end, I hope, I think I have a very, very big hopeness that we can rebuild our country. We will have enough power to help people who came back from the war, people who decided to come back to Ukraine to open their business, to settle and bring some integration and culture from West part to make our country better. But I also very have a big hope, what maybe not topic about this podcast, that our government will give to us this opportunity. Because like topic for another podcast, that we have some problems in this way also. So it's from my perspective.
Okay, so I will say that the war is not won yet. The war is won when it is over. As I mentioned earlier on, the turning point in this war was a couple of months into it, when Russia's vast land grabs came to an end. They were forced to stop. They were rejected from Kiev and from the north of Ukraine beaten soundly in battle and beaten soundly in Kharkiv and being dealt a lesson in patience in the way that they just, over a period of time, made the occupation of Kherson city untenable through a series of strikes on their supply lines. And that is exactly what's going to make their hold on the land bridge in Crimea untenable and Crimea itself untenable. Therefore, the war has turned very decisively, and it turned only a couple of months into it. It's won when it is over. And then, not just then, in actual fact, because there's already areas that are being reconstructed or have been reconstructed that were places that the Russians had occupied or destroyed in one way or another in the earliest days of the war. Those people are rebuilding their lives in those liberated parts of Ukraine. The next training session that I have to do for Lifeline Ukraine is supporting people who've been Russian prisoners of war, because they've all been subject to torture, right? So that came to mind because I'm talking about liberating areas. But the reconstruction of Ukraine, it is exactly, Greg, as you describe, and it is going to be a glorious period of reinvigoration and renewed confidence and pride in this country. Those are all of the things that are going to be driving what is going to be that glorious rebuilding process after the victory. And Ukrainians will have every reason to be proud of that and proud of what they have done in defeating the Russian Federation and then taking a pride in rebuilding their country. I'm going to continue to hope that I'm lucky enough to be here to witness that and hopefully play a small part in whatever I can of helping make this country a better place.
And Paul, can I ask you to invite me and Dasha to that celebratory meal and a few drinks in Kyiv when it's all done and dusted? Now, you're the tour guide, so you need to tell me where we're going to go that night.
I actually am something of a tour guide. I've done tours for several groups of people, be they visiting journalists or two of Canada's top cops. I gave them an excursion around parts of the Maidan where the Revolution of Dignity took place. But let's not make the plan right now. But yes, absolutely, you're invited. Daria, you are invited as well. We will do a tour of this city and we'll find some good food and some good crack.
And lastly, a request to both of you. You cannot let Putin rob your Christmas from you. So once again, Paul, 1 year on, I'm going to have to ask you to put up a Christmas tree and celebrate. Is my wish pointless?
Look, I went to go and sit somewhere for lunch today and they've already started playing Christmas music, right? It's still November and I'm listening. I despise Christmas music for a variety of reasons. Number one is that there's only a limited handful of songs, whereas we've got this amazing library of brilliant music from around the world. For like a 6-week period, we have to listen to 20 crap songs on repeat over and over and over again. So no, I wasn't feeling very Christmassy today. I will not promise to put up a tree this year, but I thank you for your advice. Okay.
And how about you, Dasha? Is the tree going up, is it?
I hope so. I have to have it in this year. I have to.
Well, Paul, I'm going to leave you on this funny story. I had Dasha and her mum over for brunch one Sunday many, many months ago. And I thought it'd be a huge treat to get some special roulades from one of our clients, James Whelan Butchers. They're lovely brown and black pudding kind of roulades. And it was something to witness watching both Dasha and her mum being very, very polite, pushing this stuff around their plate without eating any of it. So maybe, Dasha, maybe this Christmas you and your mum will come and we'll celebrate with a meal. We'll toast Paul, even though he's refusing to celebrate Christmas. And I promise you this time it will be something you can eat. Is that okay?
But Jesus, you make me embarrassed. My mom always told me that I didn't finish that meal and make people embarrassed.
And Paul, it's really funny. Dasha's mum doesn't have, her English certainly isn't as good as Dasha's. And it's amazing being in conversation with a total chatterbox who isn't speaking a language that you understand. She chatted more than both of us, Dasha. I certainly couldn't understand her.
It's very good that she's not afraid to talk. It's very.
There you go. There you go.
Paul, tell me, do we have a good Irish pub in Kiev?
Yes, there is a good Irish pub in Kiev.
Where? Give me a place.
It's called O'Brien's. It's just off Mikhailovsky Ploshad. It's on the corner of Mikhailovsky Ulitsa and Perigul.
Now I'm after 1 year and a half in Ireland. I couldn't be without Irish pub.
Both of you, thank you so much. I know it's a shit time, and it's just important that we don't forget the huge job that needs to happen over there. I don't want to see the agenda shifting. I want it in people's attention and on their minds just as much as it was a year ago, because it's easy to get pushed into the background. Be safe and Merry Christmas to both of you.
Thank you, Greg. It's always nice talking to you. Dasha, it was nice to meet you.
No, it was nice to meet you too. Safe night, safe day for you.
See you later, guys. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Win Happy podcast, which has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. If you'd like to get in touch, feel free to send me an email at greg@fusion.ie. So until next time, take it easy.